Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts.
So, looking at the news today, it's honestly incredibly easy to get distracted by all the glossy brochures when you're planning a vacation, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're looking at the drink packages, the itineraries, the shiny new pool decks.
Yeah, exactly. But we really want to dig into the actual structural forces that are, dictating the future of your vacations. Because beneath the surface of all those shiny amenities, there are really three massive gears turning the entire cruise industry right now.
Right. And they are all completely interconnected.
They really are. We're talking about the rapidly growing cost of accessing popular ports, the intense logistical reality of onboard health, and how cruise lines are physically resizing their future ships to basically deal with both of those things.
Yeah, and these aren't just abstract boardroom strategies. I mean, these are physical, operational realities. They dictate every single aspect of your experience.
From the ticket price on up, right? Exactly. From the baseline price of your ticket to whether your ship is even legally permitted to dock at a specific island. Because, you can't just change the physical size of a ship without completely re-engineering the health logistics.
Right.
And you certainly can't drop a massive vessel into a small coastal town without fundamentally altering the local economy. Or the infrastructure, for that matter.
Which perfectly brings us to the first major issue today. So think about it like this. Imagine you have a roommate.
Okay, a roommate.
Right. Now imagine that roommate brings over like 1 million guests to your house every single year.
Oh, wow. That is a lot of guests.
Yeah. And suddenly your utility bill jumps 40%. I mean, you're not just going to ask them to chip in for a water filter at that point.
Yeah.
You are going to sit down and draft a highly contentious, legally binding agreement about who pays for the plumbing, the electricity, the wear and tear on the rug.
I love that analogy because that is exactly what the city of Ketchikan, Alaska is dealing with right now. It really points to this massive structural shift.
It's the sheer physical strain on the town.
Yeah,
really.
it is. So Ketchikan City staff and the Cruise Lines International Association, CLIA, are putting a 5-year memorandum of agreement before local officials on May 7th. And this definitely didn't happen overnight.
No, from what I saw, they've been locked in negotiations for over a year.
Over a year, yeah. Grinding through 11 different draft versions just to establish these basic ground rules. Because when you look at the raw data, Ketchikan handled 651 individual cruise ship calls in 2023 alone.
Which is just staggering for a town that size.
Right. And they're projected to be one of only 3 Alaskan ports to absorb over 1 million passengers in 2024.
1 million people cycling through a community that's just, fundamentally not built for that baseline population. Or they want a contract. And Ketchikan's tourism manager, Lori Boyce, noted that this new 5-page pact, which they really had to aggressively trim down, is heavily modeled on an agreement in Juneau.
Yeah, and the motivation there is pretty obvious. Juneau had to endure this incredibly expensive, drawn-out legal fight to get their port agreement.
All right, so Ketchikan is basically just trying to stop the bleeding before it starts.
Yeah.
Avoid the lawsuit entirely.
Exactly. Because litigation just drains municipal coffers and it creates this toxic relationship with the cruise lines. So this memorandum, it's all about creating predictable mechanisms. Like it requires a mandatory 18-month notice period before the city can raise any port or wharfage fees.
18 months, wow.
Yeah, and it mandates regular city industry meetings, spring and fall. But most importantly, it establishes a formal dispute resolution process that they have to exhaust before anyone steps foot in a courtroom.
Right, and it's a 5-year deal with an automatic 5-year renewal.
Yep. But crucially, it doesn't strip the local city council of its actual legal authority to govern or set fees.
Which is a big deal because even with this peace treaty on the table, the local council members are demanding way more financial support. I mean, Jamatani floated the idea of increasing the passenger head tax or having passengers directly subsidize city utilities like water and sewer.
Well, yeah, because Ketchikan's utility rates are expected to spike over 40% in the next 5 years.
Right. And Councilmember Riley Gass pointed out that for this tourism model to actually function long-term, they need a stable, year-round workforce that can, actually afford to live there. But I want to highlight the mechanism here because the cruise lines are already paying millions.
There.
Right. Alaska levies that commercial passenger vessel tax. It's $34.50 per passenger per voyage. So the friction isn't that the cruise lines won't pay taxes. It's really this profound distribution problem.
That's the core of the political tension right there. Out of that $34.50, the state keeps the lion's share, and the first 7 Alaskan ports of call only receive $5 per taxable passenger.
Just $5.
Yeah, and that $5 is strictly earmarked by law for port facilities, harbor infrastructure, maritime services. It's meant to fix the docks.
Right, but it doesn't fix the grocery store worker's utility bill.
Exactly. When you have 1 million people flushing municipal toilets and drawing down the local water reservoir, the invisible costs go way beyond the harbor. That $5 doesn't cover a new municipal water treatment plant.
Which is where the environmental strain comes in, right? That was a massive flashpoint in these negotiations. Councilmember Abby Bradbury specifically zeroed in on concerns about water pollution in local waters.
Naturally. I mean, when locals see 651 massive ships arriving in a single season, the volume alone generates environmental anxiety.
Yeah, people scrutinize every drop of water going into the bay. But the CLIA's Lonnie Downs pointed out their member lines operate under incredibly strict policies. In Alaska, you've got this complex hybrid of state and federal oversight, like discharging untreated sewage black water is completely prohibited.
Unequivocally prohibited. And even for treated sewage or gray water from showers and sinks, they need highly specific permits that mandate advanced wastewater purification systems.
And there's a strict geographic boundary too, right?
Yeah, anything within 3 nautical miles of the shoreline is strictly under Alaska's state regulatory waters. Once they cross beyond that 3 nautical mile mark, they enter waters that might require federal EPA authorization.
Right. So Ketchikan's problem isn't just about the permits or the money. It's purely a problem of human density. You pack 1 million people into a small port, the physical infrastructure buckles.
Exactly.
But, that same density fundamentally alters health logistics when you take all those people and confine them back on the ship.
Which brings us to the second major force today, onboard health management. We actually just saw this tested on the Caribbean Princess.
Yeah, that situation really represents the ultimate logistical gauntlet. Managing health for thousands of people in close quarters requires an infrastructure that land-based resorts just don't have.
Absolutely. So the Caribbean Princess arrived back at Port Canaveral on May 11th after a confirmed norovirus outbreak. This was a 13-night Southern Caribbean voyage. Departed Fort Lauderdale on April 28th, hit Puerto Rico, Aruba, Curacao, Bonaire. But the defining moment was they had to completely skip their scheduled call in Nassau because of the outbreak.
Right. And the numbers really show how fast this stuff escalates. The CDC reported that the illness sickened 115 people. That's 102 passengers, about 3.3% of the guests, and 13 crew members.
Yeah, primary symptoms being vomiting and diarrhea. And that 3.3% number is key because the CDC's vessel sanitation program, the VSP, mandates that any ship with at least 13 passengers on a foreign itinerary calling at a U.S. port has to officially report GI illnesses. The second cases hit a 3% threshold.
Which Caribbean Princess hit, triggering that federal protocol. And this is actually the 4th GI outbreak in 2026 to hit that threshold. 2 of them were norovirus. Princess even had an earlier one at March on the Star Princess that sickened over 150 people.
Right.
But this is where I want to push back on the public perception a bit. Whenever these outbreaks hit the news, people immediately call cruise ships floating petri dishes, but the data completely dismantles that.
Oh, it really does.
Sarah R. Michaels from Tulane University points out that cruise ships account for only about 1% of all reported norovirus outbreaks globally. Just 1%.
Right.
So are cruisers actually facing a higher risk, or is this just because they're in an environment with the strictest federal reporting standards on Earth?
It's entirely a byproduct of reporting bias. As Professor Michaels highlights, close contact settings like daycares, nursing homes, and cruise ships are just structurally more likely to have outbreaks officially diagnosed and reported.
Right, because if I get norovirus from a local restaurant, I just stay home for 2 days. I don't call the federal government.
Exactly. It never enters a federal database. It's invisible to the public. But on a cruise ship, the second you hit 3%, the VSP mandates a highly public response. And the cruise line's logistical pivot is massive.
Yeah, Princess didn't just log the numbers. The CDC report shows they instantly ramped up cleaning and physically isolated the sick guests and crew. One passenger, David Hansen, actually told WESH News he just thought he had food poisoning at first.
Right, until the ship announced the broader response. And suddenly, guests see aggressive enforcement at hand-washing stations. They eliminate self-service at the buffets. Crew members literally take the tongs away from you.
Which all culminates in the terminal turnaround. When they got to Port Canaveral, they had to execute a comprehensive ship-wide disinfection in just a matter of hours.
It's incredible logistics. mobilizing hundreds of crew members with specialized sanitizing agents to wipe down every high-touch surface on a 900-foot vessel. Collecting clinical stool samples, they essentially have to hit the reset button on a floating city before the next wave of guests gets on later that same day.
Right, for their 6-night Eastern Caribbean cruise.
Mm.
And we should point out, looking at the trend line for 2026, things are actually decelerating compared to last year.
Yeah, the numbers are down.
By mid-May of 2025, there were already 17 confirmed outbreaks. The year finished with 23 total. In 2024, 15 out of 18 were norovirus. So just 4 outbreaks by mid-May of 2026 is a big operational improvement. But the core reality is, managing that health risk requires you to physically engineer the ship to handle crowd dynamics.
Which perfectly bridges us to the final piece of the puzzle today. That tension between port infrastructure in Ketchikan and crowd management on the Caribbean Princess forces cruise lines to make really calculated decisions about physical ship dimensions.
The actual size of the vessels they build.
Exactly. Because if a ship is too large, it overwhelms the Alaskan utility grids. If it's too cramped, an outbreak spreads faster and becomes a nightmare to manage. The architecture is the ultimate variable.
And Royal Caribbean just quietly revealed their strategy for the next decade in their latest SEC filing, the Form 10Q. We finally have public capacity figures for their highly secretive Discovery-class ships.
Which the industry has basically known nothing about since the order was announced in January 2026, other than they're being built at Chantier de l'Atlantique in France.
Right. But the SEC filing lists the first 2 Discovery-class ships at approximately 4,300 guests at double occupancy.
And that 4,300 number is essentially the skeleton key to their global strategy. To appreciate why, you have to look at their fleet extremes. On the smaller end, you have the Vision-class ships, carrying about 2,400 to 2,700 guests.
Right. They can access boutique ports but lack the space for huge water parks and massive revenue-generating amenities.
Exactly. And on the complete opposite end, you have the upcoming Legend of the Seas coming summer 2026. That ship is around 5,600 guests at double occupancy, but maxes out at roughly 7,600 guests. It's a floating metropolis.
Right, 7,600 people. And while that offers unparalleled economies of scale with massive casinos and specialty dining, it's severely restricted geographically. You try dropping 7,600 people into Ketchikan, and you get the exact political friction we just talked about.
The local grid just cannot handle it.
Which makes this Discovery class the ultimate Goldilocks ship, right? At 4,300 guests, it's a massive step up from the Vision class. But it's not a 7,600 passenger behemoth. It sits right in the middle, near their Quantum and Voyager classes.
It's a highly calculated move. Like, Odyssey of the Seas carries about 4,200 at double occupancy. Freedom of the Seas carries about 3,900. They're building a utility player.
Yep, large enough to hold modern amenities, but small enough to maintain global port versatility without starting a, municipal uprising over sewer capacity.
Right. And Royal Caribbean CEO Jason Liberty had hinted at smaller vessels to replace aging ones. But Michael Bailey, CEO of Royal Caribbean International, pushed back on the idea that they'd be tiny. This proves Bailey right. It's not a tiny ship, it's just versatile.
And they need that versatility, because the rest of their order book is incredibly top-heavy with mega ships. They've got Hero of the Seas in 2027, the 5th Icon ship in 2028, and Icon 6 and 7 in 2029 and 2030, plus another Oasis class in 2028 for 3,700 passengers.
They have the giant destination ships covered. The Discovery class, with deliveries scheduled for late 2029 and mid-2032, is designed to balance the whole fleet.
And we should clarify, those delivery dates are just the official handover of the hardware, not the first revenue sailings.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot we don't know. No confirmed gross tonnage, length, exterior design, or neighborhood concepts yet for that 4,300 passenger footprint.
We're seeing this across the broader group, too. The filing noted Celebrity Cruises gets the Celebrity Excite in late 2028, and they're expanding into the boutique market with 20 new riverboats between 2027 and 2028.
It's fascinating. Every single hardware order solves a specific operational puzzle.
It really is. And if there is a final thought to pull from all this today, it's just how deeply interconnected these decisions are. As the industry builds out the rest of the decade, balancing 7,600 passenger megaships against 4,300 passenger utility vessels, the ultimate question for you, the cruiser, is how this trickles down to your actual vacation. Because the physical size of the ship dictates how a destination like Ketchikan manages your arrival. which hits your wallet in the form of elevated port taxes to upgrade local water systems. And similarly, the scale of the crowds on board dictates how your trip unfolds when strict health protocols have to be enforced.
Yeah, taking away the buffet tongs, isolating in cabins, the head taxes. None of these are random inconveniences. They are the visible gears of this massive structural machine that you are sailing on. Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.